Welcome to What's Your Story? Each week I bring you a guest who's both authentic and genuine with insights and practical information that you can put to use in your personal life or career immediately. Today we're going to dive into the world of nonprofits. At the top, at the board level, with the executive director, many of you are heavily involved in nonprofits. You work in them, you give your time to them, you give your money to them. I have a person on the show today that's been in that area for 30 years. His name is Jim Van Horn from Van Horn Consulting. And today we're going to get behind the scenes and understand what do boards need to do to become more effective for the mission. Jim, welcome to the show.
Charlie, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and your help.
Jim, what is it that Van Horn Consulting does for nonprofits?
Charlie, what we do for nonprofits is work with them where they are and help them take a look at where they are and where they want to go, how they can strengthen themselves, how they can develop. Doesn't mean they necessarily have weaknesses or don't necessarily have areas of major concern. They could, but that there's a realization that they want to develop and they want to grow. And that's where we can come in and help.
So when you come in, what is your role? Because you can either be on the outside looking in, or you can actually really get entrenched and be that active partner with them. So what's the role that you like to play in your organization?
Well, the role that we like to play is really build on the whole practice of coaching and consulting. And that is, we don't want to come in and act as experts and telling people what they are not good at or what they are good at. We want to come in and have conversations around, where do you see your board right now, and where do you see some of the strengths, and where do you see some of the areas that you like to develop? My background, which I bring to this process myself, is the most recent 10 years of coaching experience with executives, leaders in the profit world and nonprofit, but who the emphasis has been on the individual leaders and developing them to either strengthen their capability of leadership or even address some of the areas that they want to develop. The role I play is catalytic. I think of myself as a catalyst, and how can I help push you, guide you, nudge you in terms of looking at some of the areas of what could be good, strong board development. My passion for this has grown out of many years of working with people. It is a passion. Sounds like it could be a trite word, but it's a drive.
No, I feel it. In knowing you, I felt that passion for it. So
it really comes from 25 years of corporate human resources experience, where I moved along and to a point where I was the executive vice president of a couple of different organizations. I concurrently got involved with nonprofit boards back then, so I was having a dual life. I was corporate executive and 30 years developing a board experience, which then culminated 10 years ago to my starting my own consulting practice and building that practice, working with individual leaders.
For whom do you do this? Like, they say in the world of sales, who's your ideal customer? But who are the people that are ideal for you in your skill set?
Historically, that's been individuals who are clearly in leadership roles and are experiencing perhaps some challenges, some areas that they haven't been familiar with. Many of our leaders, not only in the profit world, but the nonprofit world, rise up because they were experts in their area of functioning. Yeah. Whether that be a technology person, a marketing person, a finance person, they rose to the top because of the expertise there. Now they're faced with, I have to manage people, and I have to manage the organization.
And a lot of those are volunteers they have to manage,
and
right?
In the board world, in the nonprofit world, it's voluntary.
Right.
So I got to have a feeling and a sense that I'm contributing and that the board's getting something out of it and the organization's getting something out of it, because I'm not getting remunerated for the work that I'm doing. It's going to come through the same thing that drives me, a passion and an understanding that a nonprofit organization provides a very significant role in society.
Now, I'm sure that every engagement that you get is a little different. You have different, it's people. The boards are made up of people, the executive director. So everything's kind of different. But in general, if somebody makes an investment in the services of your firm, what kind of outcomes should they expect?
I think there's two different kinds of outcomes. I think you have people as individuals who want to understand and grapple with and help strengthen their individual role as a board member.
Oh.
More importantly, probably, is how do those individuals blend together and come together and work successfully as a board? How do they function as a unit? And how do they understand what their mission is and what their purpose is? How do they see themselves? And how do they carry that out? Because that role clarity or lack of it, that role expectation, is what's going to help them as a board understand better what they're doing.
They're there to help and contribute,
Right.
but they have to understand the parameters and the guidelines. And
Sure.
so if somebody's a new executive director, first time they were in that role, I would imagine there's a challenge there, a big challenge for them.
Yeah, and for many executive directors and CEOs, as well as for many board leaders, it's not a role working together that's intuitive. It's not something you just have a natural inclination for, because there are certain dynamics about it that can be working together to great success and effectiveness, and there's some dynamics about it that can leave people wondering, what the heck are we doing here? What is the purpose? You
So
know?
when did they know that it's time for you to leave? Because I don't think you're there forever, right?
No, and I don't want to be there forever, because I want to help a lot of organizations in what they're doing. Yeah, I've reached a point in my career with this drive and passion that I do see many nonprofits as very, very important potentially contributing organizations to our society. Right. And there's so many needs, but I also have seen that many boards struggle with who they are, how they're expected to perform, what is our contribution. And that's where I think I can help the most.
I'm getting a sense, it's an adage that's been around forever, that you teach them how to fish, you don't do it for them, you don't catch the fish for them.
No,
is that a fair
that is
representation?
absolutely correct. I'm not afraid to demonstrate how to cast that line, but my real purpose is to transfer knowledge and transfer understanding with individuals in the organization, where they can say, hey, Jim, this work we've done together has been really good. It's been effective. I have a better understanding now of how a board should operate. I haven't gotten to the highest level I want to get to, but I think I know how to get there now.
How do you find these organizations that need your help? In sales, where's your pipeline? Where's it come from? Is it referral? Is it?
Oh, it's mainly referral.
Okay.
There's no question, and some of that's also built off of the organizations that I've worked with, that I've been on boards with myself.
So you've actually been on boards yourself?
I have, a variety of boards. Boards where, without naming names, I was an elected member for 20 years of a public school board. That's a unique kind of board. Mm-hmm. I served on our parish council for several years.
Definitely different board, yeah.
Very challenging, particularly when you're dealing with the clergy. The third kind of board is one I've been involved with now for over 9 years, dedicated to helping people with disabilities.
Oh, really?
And so there's a variety of boards I worked on, and there are some common threads throughout.
I marvel at the number of people that I meet who have an aspiration to be on a board. And when I ask them, what do you want to do on that particular board? Many of them, it's just they want to get that on their resume, that they've been on a board. So there's a difference between somebody who actually wants to get in and make a difference, and then people that just see it as a celebrity status, if you will. Those are my words. I may be wrong.
Well, I think it's very accurate, and I do think at times organizations and existing boards don't necessarily recruit in a way that the potential board members are bringing in understand that there's more to it than just that.
So there's a lot of education that has to go on here.
Right.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I have some questions for you to dive a little bit deeper into this. So
Good.
Stay tuned. We're going to be back with Jim in a few minutes. I really want to understand some of these challenges that these boards face that Jim can help them with. So we'll be back after the break. Stay tuned.
Shelter dogs aren't broken. They've simply experienced more life. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write, the ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
To What's Your Story? I'm here today with Jim Van Horn of Van Horn Consulting, a group that deals with nonprofits and in a nutshell tries to make them as effective as they can be for their mission and for those they serve. So Jim, before the break, we explored a lot of different areas, and what dawned on me was there are lots of challenges that these boards and the executive directors have. So share with us a little bit what they are, because those are the things that stimulate people to pick up the phone and call you, right?
Yep.
So what are some of those?
Well, I might preface what I'm going to tell you by saying that, as I was saying a little bit earlier, I've been on a variety of boards. But what's interesting is I've found some common themes that go across those boards.
Good. That's what we need to hear.
And that's what I want to share with you. And I've made a list, so I think I'm going to stick with a script and read a little bit of that rather than miss some of the key points.
I think the audience would appreciate that you do that. Go ahead.
So one of the issues that comes up regularly with nonprofit boards is having enough adequate board members on their board who can provide the necessary oversight that having a 501(c) status requires. It's a 501(c)(3) status, which is the IRS federal code. And if you are a nonprofit or you filed appropriately, you are required to have a board. And
so what are some of those specialty
so
areas?
Before we get to the specialties, so one of the interesting things, even before we get there, because that's a key part, the fact that some boards are hungry for more members, more members who are fully engaged and understand their role, because what happens is even if they have a full complement of board members, if you don't have those board members attending meetings regularly, I've seen times when a board didn't have enough people to have a quorum at a board meeting, and key decisions had to be tabled. They couldn't move on certain action items, including, I remember one case vividly, where an approval of a very large invoice had to be done, and if it was delayed, there were going to be some more costs incurred.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to scramble around and make phone calls and bring some of the board members in by phone conversation. But in truth, that's not a great way of operating as a board.
No, absolutely not.
So numbers of board members are key, numbers of board members who attend and attend regularly. By the way, a good rule of thumb in terms of boardsmanship is if you have a board and the board members should be expected to attend on an annual basis 75% of the meetings. There's
And
always
how often do those meetings usually happen?
most larger organizations and smaller tend to meet once a month. So it is a commitment.
Because a lot of people are looking to get on boards, and this is the commitment.
This is the commitment.
So be careful what you ask for, because you're going to
Well,
get.
exactly.
You're going to have a commitment.
Exactly.
All right. Continue.
So, but in addition to the number issue, you touched on it. To make a board very effective, you want to have a diversity of background and a diversity of skills. There are a lot of ways that board members can contribute without crossing that delicate line. We haven't really talked about that, but that delicate line being a board member trying to become part of the organization and managing the organization. That's a no-no. And it really then deters the CEO or executive director from doing their job, and most importantly for the board perspective, being held accountable for it. Because if you have too many board members telling the CEO what to do, then who's responsible? Who in the end can be held accountable? That's the question. So, but you want board members with different skill areas.
Got that.
And those skill areas, just to name some, are governance, understanding how a board should operate, advocacy, a big one. So you want your board members to have a network out there that they can work with or develop a network and basically be a PR person for that organization.
Oh, okay.
And that's a great opportunity for people. And it isn't necessarily a specific skill as much as a specific area that you may want to focus on and develop. But we all know that any of us can help get better at networking, and that's one of those issues.
Got it. I hear you.
The other areas that that board members can contribute in are strategic planning. Every board should have a strategic plan. Every board should know where it wants to go. Otherwise, they won't know when they get there, right? And that's important, as well as financial oversight. And then last but not least, succession planning. A nonprofit wants to ensure that if our organization is going to be successful and succeed and move ahead, that we have key people in place who are developing to replace some of those top people.
I mean, if you have a long-term strategic plan and you lose an executive director for whatever reason, and you bring somebody in from the outside, they were not part of that strategic planning process. It's going to take them time to get up to speed. You want them to own it, right?
And
to
perhaps
be able
contribute to it, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. To do those kind of things.
So the other thing that comes to mind when I think about boards is that a major purpose is to not only provide these skill areas, but in terms of, so important is this governance issue. And as we were talking earlier offline, it's not something that comes intuitively to people. You know, sometimes it requires training. So if you're a new board member coming in, I would say to you, be prepared. You should be ready to roll up your sleeves a little bit and learn more about what governance is, what's expected. And what's expected, a big part of it is the willingness to work collectively with the other board members and hold that CEO and executive director accountable and actually sit with them and develop a performance plan and do an annual evaluation.
That could be tenuous, though, couldn't it?
Well, can be very conflicting at times, can be very contentious, but if you have to work at it. And over time, you work that relationship, and it really is like anything else, you build trust.
What's the average length of someone being on a board, Jim?
Well, that's an interesting question, because what I've seen is, and I think there's some logic to it, I've seen, including myself, people who tend to stay on a board for a good period of time because they found their role, they know where they can contribute, they know where they can help, and they do, and they get that sense of gratification out of it. and satisfaction. They know the purpose of the organization is something they really support, and in their role as a board member, they can support that mission and contribute. You find board members leaving who perceive in their mind maybe the only thing they were asked to come there for was to write a check. You alluded to that previously.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That happens at times, and it's not a functional way to recruit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same time, you need money, and board members should be part of fundraising and helping to bring money in. But the expectation shouldn't be that you have to write a sizable check in order to be a member.
So you bring this, what I can gather from what you said, you bring this objective perspective to help them sort through these so they can make the decision as what's best for them.
Correct.
Am I reading that
Yeah. Yep.
correctly? Okay, so we hear that there are a lot of companies out here. In my research, I found a lot of companies that claim to sort of do the things you do. So what makes you different?
I think as I've expressed, I think the years of experience that I have on nonprofit boards and in leadership executive roles really comes together with the added experience of being able to coach individuals and keep that coaching in perspective. And to go back to use a term I used earlier, really be a catalyst, really be someone to help you take a look. But what I can offer is the practical experiences I've had and what I've seen. That's not taking away from any very good consulting companies out there who can do good work, but I'm not going to give you a prescriptive model to work off of.
There's nothing shrink wrapped about.
No, no. I'm going to share with you, as you tell me your story, some of the experiences I had, and where they match up. I'm going to be able to say to you, hey, here's some of the things we did, right? And here's some of the things you might want to take a look at. I'm not going to tell you do them, but I'm going to tell you take a look at them, right?
Yeah, so the decision making is up to them.
Right.
They have responsibility to follow through, and in some ways you hold them accountable.
I do. I mean, I think that's by holding them accountable, I'm holding myself accountable, right?
Okay.
And I think that's a fair contract to have between two individuals or an individual on the board.
What are the challenges overall in the nonprofit world that these boards and executive directors are facing? What's, you think, the top one right now?
I think the biggest issue comes to do I understand my role? Do I have clarity about what that is? And do I feel like I can really contribute to this organization without, as I mentioned earlier, crossing that line and stepping into the day-to-day operation? You want to stay out of that. And you really want to find a way as a board member to contribute the skills that you bring. And by the way, something else I'll add, sometimes you have a board, a group of people, and you don't have all the skills that you need. Obviously, you want to try to recruit those. But the other option is, and I've done this myself, is bring training in. And we're not talking about rocket science in a lot of these things. You know, we're talking about, for instance, with advocacy, with PR work, we can train our board members, not to make them expert PR people, but how do I go about networking and trying to build the credibility of this organization?
Well, you have a fairly big network, from what I gather.
I do.
So within that network are resources that you can recommend or bring in.
Correct. Yeah.
I see that.
And I would also really endeavor to help in terms of how we might want to recruit board members for you.
So get people who are more inclined to do this for the right way. I had in passing, I had a client who went to a company. This is a publicly traded, no, it was a 501c. And the CEO had packed the board with all his friends. And nobody said no to him. And he got the institution in trouble. So again, having somebody like yourself involved, you can catch those trends very, very quickly. Listen, time's up.
Great conversation.
There's more to talk about, but we don't have time right now to do that, Jim. This is the time on the show where I ask you to speak into the camera to your audience and share anything you'd like to do. What would you like to say to them?
Well, I certainly would like the opportunity initially a non-paid basis to sit down with you as an executive director or as a board president and explore if you have questions and concerns about how we might as a board operate better, strengthen. It doesn't have to be negative.
Right.
It can be very positive. I've seen boards that are functioning very well and they want to get to a higher level. And you and I would have a conversation about that, and I could share with you some ways that I could try to help. So I would look forward to you as a nonprofit leader to get in touch with me.
How would they do that?
And the easiest way is to call me, and the phone number is 610-909-2621. And I'll repeat that, 610-909-2621. I'm also accessible on LinkedIn. If anyone uses
you're on
it.
LinkedIn?
I am.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Charlie, I want to thank you. You've been a great interviewer.
I have a great person to work with, Jim. Listen, we're going to be back next week with another guest that's authentic and genuine, with information like Jim shared, insightful. You can put it to use. Please be here next week. We will be. Thank you. Be well. What's your story?
Good.